Okay, real talk. If you've been telling yourself I'm fine, it's not that bad, or I'll deal with it later, this episode's for you. I'm Teresa Schönebeck, and today I'm sitting down with Eric Rush, and his story will stop you in your tracks. We're talking military life, PTSD, the identity crash after deployment, rock bottom moments, including prison, and the turning point that helped him come back to life. And here's the part that surprised me. It was dance, because movement brings you back into your body. And when you've lived through trauma, your body can feel like the last place you want to be. We're also talking about why joy can feel vulnerable, why you don't have to hit rock bottom to get help, and why community changes everything. Let's get into it.
I was in the entertainment business for a while, so I haven't. I was in entertainment. I've had quite a bit of journey in the entertainment business. I had to get through college at Baylor University expense. You know, you got to pay it somehow. So Eric Christopher Rush is my whole name. I was in international ballroom dancer. I was classically trained after I got out of the military, and I was just trying to find my identity again and trying to find the place of playfulness and just the rigidity of me. I was an asshole. You know, I wasn't a very pleasant guy to be around and for myself, and, you know, going 0 to 60 every time we went out, it was that kind of that guy, you know, and I said, I got to change something about me. So just one day I decided to go. I was like, I knew I could dance when I was there. I would go to the country bars and women would be waiting for me. I swear to God, people would tell you, they'll be like, yeah, Rush can dance, you know? So I said, I'm going to go in the studio. I was a strength trainer at various gyms in Waco when I was going to school there. And so I had that hard ass mentality already. And I said, I got to soften this up. I got to get back to the playful side, because when I got deployed, like my whole personality changed. I lost my identity being deployed and just got ultra serious. So I walked in the studio one day on a Saturday, mind you, Saturday. I was like, God saying, go in there and see if you can become a dance teacher. Like, I was like, okay, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I walk in, they tested me out. They said, yeah, I think we can probably train you to become a really great dancer, a great teacher. And so what ended up happening is I became really, really good. And I started traveling around the world, competing in international ballroom in Latin. So in my entertainment name back then was Eric Romero. So there are people that know me as that, right? The studio owner said, you need to change your last name. You're a Hispanic guy. And I was like, okay, so I did. And so we went with that identity. And then when I traveled to Italy or wherever I went to compete, you know, I was like, you know, they would roll my R's. They would, Eric Romero. And everyone say, and all my buddies would be like, Romero, Eric Romero, like, you know, yeah, this is a whole story. So all my guys are like, what the hell are you doing now? They've all been shocked because my story from military to incarceration to ballroom dancer. But God, like, just kind of just say, so I want to soften your heart. And the unique thing about being an international ballroom dancing, it's comprised of 17 different dance cultures. You literally have to like learn how to adjust your personality to those type of cultures. Like if you're dancing the Argentine tango, it's got to be very sensual and dominating, and you have to switch personalities. If you're dancing the waltz, it has to be elegant and flowing. Yeah. So for me, I became a 17 dance professional dancer. You lose yourself, right? And then God's saying, I'm going to give you everything. I'm going to give you all of it, and you're going to tap in. Well, I became one of the best in the industry. I was one of the leading dance instructors that could create a studio and help revitalize the studio or save it and get participation of the students, and traveled around the world competing with the best and being trained by the best in the world. I worked with the cast with Dancing with the Stars. I've done that whole thing. I just want to get back to who I was, you know, like try to get back to Eric Rush.
Dancing is so therapeutic.
Yeah.
Like it really is probably for me, one of the most playful things you can do is dancing. It gets you out of your head and into your body.
It does. It took a lot of I had to learn how to dial down who I was, you know, like who I was. I had to really change. People come in and they're dealing with esteem issues. Students who come to dance, they're looking for sense of belonging, means of expression. They're going through a divorce and they just want to feel that connection with somebody, and you have to walk through them with that. And I think I had so many life experiences in me that I could actually assist students. And I was the best instructor. I have the most lessons ever taught in a 1 week period. Record in the world. It's 140 dance lessons in 1 week. And you have to be able to dial in the person's soul. I was really good at doing that. And I think it's because I had been through so much brokenness before that.
You can feel, I'm sure, dancing if somebody's in pain.
Yeah.
Because how their energy and how flowing or not flowing and kind of stuck into their body or into their mind, and they can't move their body.
So true. Like There was a little old lady. Her name was Iris Goldberg. Okay. And there's nothing like traveling around the world, number one, because you're going to like Banff, Canada, or you go to Florence, Italy, and you're dancing in castles, like literal castles, in your tuxedo. And that woman's wearing a ballroom gown and flowing one for ballroom. And it's such an amazing experience. Well, there was a little old lady. Her name was Iris Goldberg. She got rest her soul. She was one of my favorite students because I knew she was 73 years old, and she was just trying to have that joyful, playful, to stay engaged with her. Her husband had passed away. And the way it works in ballroom is that your students pay for your trip. They pay to dance with you. So this woman, I always wanted to make it a priority to like make her feel alive, feel sexy and fun. And it was a beautiful experience. And one day, and I would push her, and then one day I just see this little tear come out of her eyes. And I said, Iris, are you okay? Did I do something wrong? It's just that you're not treating me like a little old lady. You're treating me like a woman. You're treating me like I can do this. And we ended up traveling around the world together with some of my, other students.
I just recently was reading about joy, how it's actually one of the most vulnerable emotions. And most people actually don't experience joy based on other emotions getting in the way and the trauma.
Yeah.
And made me think of my grandmother. She would have been 70 and never been on a plane before. I took her to Disney World. I take her on a ride, like a roller coaster. They're ranked 1 through 5 or something. 5 being like, holy crap, we might have a heart attack, right?
Yeah.
So she's like, is this a scary ride? She's looking at it, but I'm like, yeah, it's a roller coaster. I didn't really think anything, but I'm like, should I take her on it? It does say like high risk, and I take her on it. And she gets off. And I mean, the whole entire time, mind you, she's screaming, oh my God, we're going to die. We get off, and she looks at me. She's like, that was better than sex with your grandfather. And I was like, what? I don't think she had ever at 70 experienced true joy.
Yeah.
Like, I think she functioned and survived and didn't know how to allow herself to have that playfulness and that experience of joy. I guess you don't know what you're missing until like that lady dancing with you, right? All of a sudden she's like experiencing a completely different version of herself dancing.
It is like a roller coaster ride for her. Yeah. And for me, I think it taught me a lot about myself, of like how wise I was. But at the time, I think also it was just like I needed a break from myself, from all the stoic, the rigid, rock solid, like no one's going to F with me kind of thing, And I needed to like redefine my character in this capacity. But ultimately, it was really a mask for things that still hadn't been resolved in my life too. It was a weird way that God said, "Oh yeah, you're going to learn everything about women," because that was an issue for me too. I didn't know, like I couldn't figure it out. But when you start working with women in the dance business and you're teaching students how to dance, you have to be a certain way, and you have to. But yeah, God said, I'm gonna break you this way, and you go, this is an unconventional way to do it. Yeah. But people even say like, dude, you went from prison to becoming a ballroom dancer. Like, but the thing is people didn't know my heartache, the brokenness I was walking into the studio with, so they never knew because I kept it. But inside, I had already been fractured. I was really, really going through a lot of traumatic experience in my soul and my life. But I just learned how to mask it using the dance business, and it helped me for time to really to take a break from that.
Jail ballroom dancer.
Yeah.
Traveled internationally.
But I kept it close to my chest. I just needed, eventually that stuff came back to haunt me, and it was like, okay, let's just start dealing with this shit now,
Well, and now I want to dive into some of it. Everyone has trauma, and it's like, at what point I think we are at our age at that 40, 50, where all of a sudden it catches up and you're like, oh, we actually have to deal with that. Yeah. I think when we're younger, what I find is that most people are into their careers, they're having children, they have so many distractions, whereas we get older and we've been established because we're working super hard young. Now we have time to sit with self and our heads, and we're like, okay, this doesn't feel so good. At some point it catches up. I guess you got to stop running.
Yeah.
When someone asked you, who are you? How would you answer that?
I would say I'm a community leader. Would say a listening leader too, a veteran advocate. And to answer the essence of your question, right, is I'm a thoughtful, kind, caring, loving person who has an empathetic heart towards humanity. Having gone through the things I've been through, I know what it's like to suffer. I know what it's like to have self-inflicted wounds. I know what it's like to also be celebrated in fall, and the person that's in lifetime rehabilitation and recovery.
What's one thing about you now that would shock the version of you of your 15-year-old self?
15-year-old. Whoa.
Yep.
That's a dangerous guy right there. 15 years old is, what would shock is that 15, I would go to this, to the bookstore, and I would go to the GQ magazine, right? I would pull the magazine up and, and look and see all this jewelry on people. The guys would be like, dude, that looks dope. That looks sick, man. I want to get that one day. I want to get that Versace necklace. And I said, I want to, and it was in Florence, Italy. And it was Versace. And when I was traveling and competing in international ballroom, and I flew to Florence, but we went to Venice and we went to the Versace store. There was that necklace that I always wanted. And this is like years later, right? But I would say, I would be surprised how much you've been able to accomplish from the brokenness that I was born into, and the emotional and psychological struggle I had been through, being almost spiritually, I would say, malnourished as a young man. I was like, look at you did this, and this, and this, and somehow you found that joyful hope.
It's like when we look back, we never thought our lives could turn out as great as they are.
Yeah.
'Cause in that time, you think your life is, the best it's going to get, which at that time for me didn't feel good, just like you at 15. So when you can look back, it's kind of a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's so amazing that God, like I said, at 15, I was looking at this magazine, I'd see this necklace, and you're like, one day you're going to get it. Like one day you're going to go travel around the world. You're going to go to war first, and you're going to go to prison, and then you're going to go to ballroom. Like it's
But you're eventually going to get that.
You're going to get it. You're going to go the long way, but when you get it, you'll know. You're going to know. And so it's a special thing. So yeah, but I say that, because I got to be humble about it too. It's, you have to respect that too.
Yeah. God's timing. It's funny how we have the tendency to think like, why is he not doing it now? Why is it taking so long? We'll never understand it until it happens. And then when you look back, you're like, I understand why that happened. I needed to take that path.
Yeah.
There was no way, no shortcut to get there. Okay. So when you hear the phrase mastering the art of living, what does that actually mean in your life, not in your bio?
It means that you're living life with intention. You're putting things in front of you that are going to be a building block, not only just for yourself, but for someone else. And I believe that it's also like you're living life by a design concept that maybe you learn from somebody else that is living, that's mastered the art of living, of joy. I say the last 4 chapters of my life are, eternal love, peace, joy, and happiness. This is the one thing I learned, is that God's not asking me. He's not asking me to go get. He's commanding me to go get it. He's saying, these are the last. You've already done the other 5 chapters, and you know what that was, right? Yep. Pain, suffering. And so for me, joy, love, happiness, that is the last 4 chapters of when I say mastering the art of living. Do I have those? Am I living in that, under that commandment? God said, you don't have a choice anymore, man. If you want to go back to that prison cell where you were at, like that's the choice after not doing what I commanded you to be, to be set obedience, and acceptance that I'm worthy enough to hold on to those things, and that I'm capable and I'm strong enough and responsible enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big one.
So I want to talk about kind of the messy. So I know you're on this chapter now, but I want people to know Eric, right?
Yeah.
And the messy middle part, the rock bottom and kind of the truth where, you were to where you are now. So take us back to the rock bottom. What was the moment you knew, like, I can't keep living like this?
Well, I think there's a lot, like you hit a lot of branches down the way to rock bottom, and you're supposed to hold on to one of those branches, but you still hit it, right? And you still hit it, and you hit it, and you're bouncing off the wall all the way down, right? It's so hard, but there have been times where I say there have been several rock bottoms, right? But I think the truest rock bottom was I was in a McConnell unit. When I got out of the military, I had really bad fall had identity problems. The transition was tough. I was divorced 30 days after I got out of when I came back from home from combat, and my life just completely unraveled. But that wasn't even rock bottom, right? Because I was still free. I was still around, I was still, making choices that were just chaotic. So I get out and I turned to coping mechanisms that I thought were going to just medicate my problem that I was going through. And I had no idea what I was struggling with at the time. And then eventually I got multiple DUIs, like 2 in the first year out, the third one in the third year, and then a drug possession charge with that DUI. But it was just like game, set, match, and you're only 27 years old. You wrecked your life completely.
It's interesting because the rock bottom, as most people on the outside, when we see somebody we love going through something, we think, do they not think this is rock bottom?
Yeah. True rock bottom is when you're those institutions in death. And I had tried to take my own life at one of those stages. And then, but the jails and institution were the ones that were next, right? And the institution of Department of Correction, to answer your question, is I was in McConnell unit, and I was in Ag Seg, which is it's a section where, maybe you got in a lot of fights and they put you in by yourself. And it was by myself in a cell, and it was dark green, like, so it's just dingy, nasty, the lights flickering like they do. Ants were on the floor, and I was in a max prison. I was only sentenced to 2 years, but I was in a max prison. So max prison is for people that, many, many years. I went to 5 max prisons in those 2 years. I'm there. It was the first time I had been in the prison system like that. And I was sentenced with two guys, and one was doing 99 years and the other guy's doing 60. And I was just doing 2 years, right? I just freaked out. It was so weird because I start hear the guys saying the other guy killed himself today in the balcony above. They're talking about people killing themselves. Yeah, it's serious. Like the movies, it was like that. I was like, yeah, Johnny killed himself last night. He jumped over the balcony. I was like, dude, I'm sitting here like by myself listening to this crap, and I'm like, I just got broke. I broke down. And I was like, please help me. Don't forget about me. I started crying to guards, and I just like, please don't forget about me. I was panicking, and it was weird, but the window across from me, right? Let's say there's a window across from me, and my cell's here, and I'm facing the window, and it's all plastic, right? And it was shattered because of heat. Texas heat had shattered it, right? And this little light from the window, you could only see this little light, and it just came to my cell, and I started crying. I was crying, and I was like, God, please, like, help me, God, help me, and I was saying, help me, God, help me, help me. And that's when I knew I had reached rock bottom. But God, like, in his funny way, he's just like, get the letters out your friends who wrote me. People were trying to intervene in that process. They were trying to like pour into me before I went to prison, and, just trying to, just interceding in my life that way. And so they had written me some letters, and they were funny letters, like, don't drop the soap, dude. Like, tell Bubba I said hi. Yeah. And I swear I was crying, but that crying turned to laughter crying while I was crying. So I was reading, I just started laughing. I was like reading their letters, and it just like that brokenness for that moment was so surreal. But once I read those letters, it flipped on its head. Like, it was like I was laughing and crying at the same time and saying, I don't know what hope is. In fact, I had read a book that it was a science called The Science of Mind by Ernst Holmes while I was in there. And it was a Scientology book. And it talked about there is no hope. How can there be hope if there is a God? Because God's everything. So I had convinced myself that there was no hope. But in that moment, when I had that brokenness, it was like, okay, everything's going to be okay. So I had that moment. It was not very long where I felt it, but it flipped.
I just think of the word hope. And to me, that's the only thing that keeps us alive.
Yeah.
Hope is what actually keeps that drive internally to keep your body and your mind going. I mean, it's not like you need a lot, but you need some of it.
Yeah. There's hope where you have your fingers crossed, right?
Yeah.
Right. And then there's hope, the angry hope. Like, I hope hope this. And then there's joyful hope.
Yeah.
And for that one moment, I felt the joyful hope from my friend, just those letters from my buddies had sent to me. And I was crying and laughing. And I send them a message every now and then, say, man, you guys sending me a letter when I was incarcerated was like a huge turning point for me.
Yeah.
Because this calmness came over me. And then I learned the stories of the 2 guys next door to me. And it was just like, dude, you don't belong here. This is not your place. And one day, probably the guy next to me was 18, and he had killed a gas station clerk, and he was 35 when I met him. So he had been there since he was 18, doing 99 years. Another guy was a drug smuggler, 60 years. Yeah. So that would say that was one rock.
It takes multiple rock bottoms. It's like, so there is, I think, a moment where we internally know, at least it's a turning point where we fundamentally know that we feel different to actually make this rock bottom actually make a change, to actually give us a sense of hope to move forward, hopefully in a different direction of believing like maybe there's something more for me.
Yeah. The other part too is I realized in the therapy that I received throughout my time being incarcerated and stuff like that was like, you don't have to hit rock bottom if you don't want to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's a conscious choice to make, to say, I don't want to hit rock bottom. So that's the one thing I have to be mindful. You don't have to hit rock bottom.
What were you using, like addiction, chaos, distractions, to not feel your pain? What were you running to? What were some of those things to basically numb it?
I just wrote a song called King of the Bar Stool. And it talks about,
Congrats.
yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Are you going to sing it?
No, I'm not going to sing it. No, it's a dedication to my father who passed away last year, or it's just it'll be 2 years now. But it's about my relationship with him and how I medicate. I was medicating my whole life. Like my relationship with my father was at the bar. I grew up. I'd sit next to him at the bar. I was 12 years old. I'd be at the bar with him, watching him get drunk, and I would watch him have this level of camaraderie with his friends. And I really admired and appreciated that kind of level of joy and that he would bring his friends. And when he passed away, it was almost 200 people at his funeral. And I remember saying, I said, stand up if you ever had a beer with my dad. And the whole place stood up. I was like, holy crap. But everyone knew I was that kid that would sit next to him. And in the song, it says, I was like a soldier watching over you. For me, it was always, that was it, like drinking. It was like that my relationship started with my dad being raised in the bar, or it was weekends at the bar with my dad. That's the relationship. And it wasn't like, let's go play catch and let's go, whatever. Yeah. But I think that's what it came down to. That's how I medicated it.
It was mainly alcohol.
Alcohol.
I grew up like that too. Most of my childhood is like the VFW or like an American Legion, because I grew up in a small town. But it's like all it was my grandparents and my parents just drinking. And I would be the kid that just sat there watching these people just get drunk. What did divorce, jail, or prison say to you about who you were at the time?
That's a hard one. I mean, I had become so numb post-military. When I came out, I was numb. Like that's what, you use the alcohol to medicate yourself, and it turned to numbingness, right? So I could never register what was my bad action in this situation. What was if a fight became volatile or whatever, I broke things and stuff. Like I couldn't register it in my head that I was doing wrong. Cause like my parents left when my dad and mom and dad were teens, when they had me and my brother. They were just trying to find their own identity. They didn't nurture me and cultivate that experience for me and emotional guidance system. So I was numb. So I didn't really know.
I can relate, actually. Yeah. Like I think of sometimes it's like, even as an adult, I find myself when people say sometimes like, how do you feel? And sometimes when you're in different moments and phases of your life, it's like, I don't feel anything. Like I don't have a thought and I'm not feeling, but I'm sure I have a thought and feeling. I'm suppressed or numb for whatever that reason was, survival. And so I can't tell you. But I didn't know if, looking where you can, you're in a dark moment and you're like, gosh, I feel like a piece of shit and I feel worthless, or something during the time that you were in jail or getting a divorce. When you're in a cloud, and you're suppressed and you're numb. Sometimes those thoughts aren't even there.
Yeah, I think it was addiction too.
Sure.
For that was it too. Like I was disoriented the whole time. Like I didn't know where I was coming or going. If I went to the bar to go get drunk, I'd be like, by myself. You can't go with any friends. You don't have any friends, and you're feeling so isolated too. But I look at the prison part, and then you realize that I think the most important thing is I am not supposed to be here.
Yeah.
Like, didn't say I didn't earn to be there. I'm just saying that this guy's got something better for me, and I'm not living up to my fullest potential.
I love that you saw that. So what's a truth from that season you almost never said out loud, but you're willing to share today?
If I knew how to do better, I would have. It's weird because I read a book. It's about kids. If they knew how to do better, they would. I didn't have any of the tools in my toolbox. I say I was born into brokenness. Then I kept breaking things. Eventually I broke my own life, So for me, it was like, I didn't never have those tools in the toolbox, and I didn't get them till I was incarcerated, ironically.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I went through a behavioral modification program, and it was an 8-month program where they teach you about core values and conflict, how to handle conflict. And I didn't know anything about what core values were. And I didn't know what different ways conflict came to you, how to handle like engrossment and minimization and ridicule and hostility, and they teach you how to respond to those kind of confrontations when you have them. So you got to know why so you can know how to stop, and I never knew why, but I knew I was burned out by 30. I was like, shit, I didn't want to drink, but I'm just doing it because I have to drink. Yeah. Like not because I want to drink, but I have to now. It's a habit, Yeah. Like it became a habit, not like it was just like, I'm tired. I don't even want to go to this club. I've been doing this since I was a kid, So,
retire.
Retire. Seriously.
No,
but I didn't retire. Yeah, I need to retire, but I would never hang on my cleats or whatever.
Okay. So the turning point,
yeah,
kind of your healing and rewriting, obviously your story and where you're at today. Walk me kind of into the VA visit. So you went in for one thing. What did you actually walk out with? Okay,
so I walked in because I was dealing with a really bad nasal infection. I was living in Lisa Viejo, California, outside of Laguna Beach area, and I went in for a VA just went in for a nasal infection. And instead of a nurse coming out, a psychologist came out and asked me, had I ever been diagnosed with combat PTSD? I just broke down, like totally broke down. Started crying profusely, hit my knee. It was bad. I can feel it today. Just talking about it, it was like just such a surreal moment for me. It was like all this pressure, like this valve that had been tightened, it got kind of it loosened out as it walked out. But all this pain came out of me, right? But now that it's out of me, I feel like I'm letting go of this pain, and I've been addicted to this pain for so long because that's
Pain's
what,
addictive.
yeah, anxiety and all that, right? Like I was addicted to the pain. So letting it go broke me even more. I ended up living in my car. I just shut down because when you start processing the stuff, like you relapse, but not relapse in a drinking way, but relapse in a mental, spiritual, psychological way. And I shut down. Man, I remember putting boards on my windows in my little Honda Accord, and I was living in my car for almost a year. And people walk by, and my friend Diane at the time, she'd come visit me and say, "How you doing? Bring me some food." And it was just one of those things that you still had to deal with the trauma. Now it's time to confront this shit, confront it head on. And so when you say what I left with, that's what I really left with. Right? Not to the point to where I was suicidal, just hurt, like pain and shame and guilt. And, because I've been to prison and all that stuff. I knew I say that the diagnosis was it was not a prison sentence. It was a lifeline. Now that I look at it. Yeah.
And you can look back. How did it change you to hear this is combat related, not that you were just broken?
That explained a lot of things. Like it was like from this point to this point, I could actually feel all the disorientation, the numbingness, those two things, the disorientation, that was big, huge, right? The hypervigilance, all that explained how I would go somewhere and feel this insurmountable pressure. It started to, like I said, why? You got to know why so you can know how. So once that pointed to why, because in that process of getting those DUIs and stuff, like you get treated for the symptom, which is alcohol, which is substance use. That was just a symptom, like an allergic reaction to what you had been through. But then it got to the root cause. This is the root cause. Then it said, oh, that's why you had combat related trauma that you were dealing with and had to walk through that too. So that helped say, okay, now I'm getting understanding. And the more I went to counseling, years of counseling, 10 plus years of counseling, everything started to see more clearer. The fog was like, this is why, this is how and
I think of people that I know who have been married to people in, military, how they don't really think that they have like that PTSD and the severity of it because you're not necessarily consciously thinking of it. It's sitting in your subconscious.
Yeah.
And so you think you're okay.
Yeah. I recently had some guys on Big Country Veterans. That's the name of the organization. Amazing guys. And they talked about a thing called operator syndrome. And it's a whole different thing than combat PTSD. It's like when you're an operator, you're like going into the fight and you're going in with such vigor and you're like, you're in that zone all the time. So what they're looking at is saying, hey, maybe the guys that said snipers are the operators, right? They're like, these guys are coming in with a different mindset and the intensity and the things that they haven't really dialed down. It's not really combat PTSD. Say, I don't want to go there anymore. I don't want, trauma hurt me. But this is like, they wouldn't avoid the conflict. They would go into the conflict. So they talked about that. And I think that was one thing that when I heard, that was the first time I had heard it in my podcast recently. And I was like, yeah, operator syndrome might be a thing. Like it might be even more.
I've never even heard of it.
Yeah, it was the first term that my friend Michael Grome, he was an operator for the Navy and a special operator for the Navy, and he talked about operator syndrome. That was the first time I was like, dude, like, yeah. We need to figure that out. And he's been introducing it to the VA system.
Well, the thing is like properly treating someone in the way that they need to be treated, right?
Yeah.
Because I have a nurse practitioner. I've had her on a couple episodes and she specializes now in PTSD. And even when people think PTSD, they do think military, where like I had PTSD.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I wasn't in military, but I had sexual abuse trauma and I had all this trauma, but I wouldn't have put it together because PTSD lives in your body. I mean, so it's like, people can prescribe all these drugs, but until you're willing to deal with it, it actually is still there.
Yeah.
So it's something that, potentially you live with forever and you just need to be aware of it and how to manage that and process things. And but I think it's underdiagnosed. And so you miss these people that could benefit, or if there's like an operations where it's another level of
Yeah.
maybe how they think or how they have to perform based on their role,
Yeah.
that has to be treated differently
Yeah.
than somebody else.
Yeah, I was really shocked about
Yeah,
that when I
it's
heard that. I was like, wow, that's like right on point. He did a lot of research on it, and it's actually a new thing. He said it like happened within the last 5 years.
I love that. In real life, what did healing look like on a Tuesday when no one was clapping for you?
Hmm.
Because when you go through, and we all have our own journey of healing, and you're on your own. You can have support systems, of course, around you. But when you're going through healing and you have the highs and the lows, and you don't have somebody on your dark days, like really saying, "Hey, Rush,
Yeah.
you got this. Don't get stuck today. There's light, right?
Yeah.
Just keep moving."
Yeah.
But what do you do in those moments when no one's really there?
That's a good question. That's a hard one to answer. I always see like for me, like healing is what can I do for somebody else? You know what I mean? Like if it's sitting down in a podcast, talking, listening to them, asking them questions and doing some introspection with them that could contribute to my healing today, to my rehabilitation. And the other part too is loving my wife.
What did getting your degree and building your career prove to you? Not anybody else, but like
Yeah.
prove to you.
So I have multiple degrees, right? 3 degrees. And the first one I remember breaking down, like crying hysterically. Like I was very upset.
Yeah.
Very upset at my dad. He came down and came to my graduation. He's like, what's going on? I was ashamed of that it had taken so long to get to that, what happened, right? And I was like, I couldn't accept the accomplishment. And then the second one came and I was like, I don't know, this one, okay, maybe. But then when I got my master's degree, it was like, okay, man, like God's credentialing your experience, man. You probably could go for a PhD and get that too. You got a PhD in life, but it's like, this is all that trauma, whatever record I have. Now this is a record over here, this is down here.
Yeah.
That's this much old. And this is from 2021, So for me, it was like, it became undeniable, like of God's, I called it the absurd arithmetic of Christ. Like he's the only one that has, by all standards, mathematically, I should not be where I'm at right now. If you look at the damage, but he solved the problem and he granted me the mercy and grace to evolve and grow.
I want to talk about your podcast. You have obviously the 2. And so why did you start the Rush?
Introspective.
Yeah. Why did you start that one? And what problem were you trying to solve for yourself?
I always say that all my podcasts will tell you what I'm working on in myself, right? And so the Rush Introspective and Mastering the Art of Living podcast is just about learning how to master the art of living, right? And for me, that was like, I had got introduced to the thought of introspection, which is, back in the day it was introspection. A lot of psychology was like, do personal inventories of yourself, character flaws. Throughout my whole process, when that diagnosis came, when the why, and I said, man, I got to get my identity, childhood identity, military coming out identity, prison identity. But I think that I needed to learn more from other people. Even then, I held my cards close to my chest. No one knew that the dark past, whatever, right? But I kept it close because I was using it as fire. Like it was like, shoot, I can't trust anybody with this crap. Their introspection was about listening, about finding individual and collective values, and not looking at the world, but looking at the people next to you and how they're living life, and maybe you can define yourself through what they're doing. But man, there were times in those podcasts where I just I would listen. I knew that I had been to prison and I knew that I had had these same issues this guy I'm interviewing with. And I'd get like everything in me would be just like turning, like all this emotion. Oh my God. Like I knew exactly what he was feeling, right? Yeah. But I never let it be known. But eventually it hit me, it was like, dude, like, you're not alone. And it wasn't until recently, maybe the last 5 years.
I think that part of my own healing, I would say, when you can sit across from somebody who has that same experience and, you think yours is bad, right? And then you can listen to someone else's and you're like, wow, they had the experience maybe even worse than I had it.
Yeah.
That's a whole different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Then you feel like, you feel lighter. Because
Yeah.
you're like, wow, somebody can actually truly relate to exactly what I went through, if not a worse experience than what I went through.
If you allowed yourself to talk about it, right? You walk away saying, okay, I understand that person, but it wasn't the talking, it was the listening for me, and really truly listening But yeah, the Rush Outrospective was about mastering the art of living, and that outrospection was just about like just listen to other people. And I think that's been the shape of how I take on I have 3 podcasts that I run.
What would you say like introspection, I guess, is too? Because I'm thinking about outro. How would you describe intro perspective?
Introspection would be is an examination of yourself,
Yeah.
right? What are my strengths and weaknesses? I think being in the therapeutic sense, that's what I spend a lot of time doing.
Yeah.
And then talking out your whole thing. And eventually you hit a wall and be like, man, I ain't got nothing left.
Yeah.
You're pulling everything. I'm going to go live in my car for a while, you know?
Yeah. We're going backwards.
I feel like a piece of crap.
Yeah.
I'm hearing myself now, you know?
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to go through that, though.
Yeah.
That's I think that's why people don't want to, because it's hard to look at self.
Yeah.
It's dark and painful. And then you made those choices, right? No one made you. You made those choices. And it's hard to not have, I think a lot of us have a lot of shame and guilt that we carry.
And regret.
Yeah. With our experiences. How has listening to other people's stories changed the way you see your own?
Like I said, I think that, first of all, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
There are people that have gone through similar suffering. Also, like understanding that suffering is sacred. Like it's a treasure. Literally, like your suffering, what you went through is now a treasure that you're using to advance a cause or to put a spotlight on or to advocate for. And it's a treasure when people sit down and to share their struggles with me, for sure.
I mean, you're creating a safe space for people. Most of us who have been through some form of trauma, that is what we're afraid of. I hear that all the time with people, like, thank you for creating a safe space to feel like I can actually have this conversation with someone.
Yeah.
In our space, I guess, that we're talking, it's like, this is such a vulnerable conversation. It's our dark parts. We wore a lot of masks for many years. We played many roles. So you're kind of taking that and you're basically getting naked and you're saying, hey, here's all of what I went through. I hope that when they walk away, like I become a second part of their journey of like breaking whatever walls that they have and feel like, wow, I'm not living that sense of fear of not being able to be myself.
Yeah, it's cool because I too believe like I just started owning my story, like truly last 5 years, you know, even when I finished my degrees, it was like, I wasn't really owning my story, you know, it was like, dude, like, you know, I think someone challenged me and say, Rush, like you give all these people platforms but when are you going to talk about the majesty of Christ in your life, what he did for you, what he's doing for you? Yeah. When are you going to start speaking for that? And it was a big challenge that always gnawed at me for a while. And when I first had my first speaking engagement, and it was called The Sinking Ship, and it talked about how I was a captain of a sinking ship, and I'd been taking on water for years. Didn't know, you know, I thought I could navigate through the roughest waves, the roughest ocean, and you don't know you're drowning until you're at the rock bottom, you know?
Remember how it made me think when you were even talking about going back to your rock bottom in the prison cell, those letters, right? Like somebody brought joy and laughter and gave you some glimpse of something better than where you were. I'm laughing at you, but the whole jail to ballroom, it's like, I mean, maybe somebody wants to have that exact same experience, but they're like, that doesn't make any sense, but it does make sense. That was your path. It doesn't always make sense.
No, yeah, that's true. 2, I think the part of me coming out was like the season of listening was for me. Like Christ just said, you're going to get a season of listening. You're going to talk to people who know how to share their story, and you're going to learn how to articulate yourself on a certain level too. Because, you know, the Grady Rush would be blah, 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 you know, like I'll be talking like I was on Charlemagne, the God's podcast. It would not be as pretty as it is right now. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But it was just learning how to get the art of listening and how to communicate my story too. So
it's that vulnerability though, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me about one guest or episode that just like really hit all of your emotions, right? Really hit you in the gut and that you felt didn't really leave you the same.
I might get upset. I might get emotional right now thinking about it. His name's Pastor Richard Brunson, and he's over at Louisville Lighthouse Church. He went to prison for 8 years and then became a pastor at one of the churches. And I went to his place to go do it at the church. Set it up, big cross on us, behind us, or like between us. And I was interviewing him and knowing that I had, see, I told you I was
feel right. Actually,
this
is I'm like, oh gosh.
Yeah. So we're sitting here interviewing him, and he's talking about how Christ had intervened in his life. And remember, I hadn't told nobody my story. And I was sitting there full of so much anxiety and pressure and pain. And I was like, what is going on with me right now? Like, I feel this, like personally, this guy's speaking this thing in my heart and soul about me. They say they're holding a mirror to mine when people talk, and when they share stories, like some of them are holding a mirror to me. And for me to be able to see myself in that person was I was like, it shocked me. And I think that was probably the first layer that I realized that something with this podcasting is doing something to me. He came to see me speak at the sinking ship, and he was there. And I told him I owe a lot to what I'm doing, coming out and sharing a story to him. And
Yeah.
good guy, amazing man, and how God manifested this whole experience for him to become a pastor at a church. And it was really cool.
Yeah. And that's his story too, right?
Yeah.
God showing up everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to end this kind of last segment for somebody really is kind of going through that hard chapter. So someone listening feels like they're too far gone.
Yeah.
And you were sitting across from them.
Yeah.
What would you want to say to them?
The traditional thing is say you're not alone, right? It's like you're not alone in this. And it's true. You're not alone. But sometimes you are. Sometimes you are alone.
And I was going to say this, when you are in that moment, your hard times, you do feel alone.
Yeah.
So it's almost like someone saying it.
Yeah.
It makes it worse.
Yeah,
than
exactly.
Better. So most people just look at you like you don't get it.
Yeah.
You don't understand,
Yeah, it's true. You are truly alone in your heart and mind and spirit. There was a couple of times in this journey that I've been on where I took somebody to a church and took them to light a candle. Explained to him that this one small act of lighting this candle is a symbol of faith in Christ and the faith that things are going to get better. And all you have to do is light this candle and give it to God and asking him to emote light in this dark space in your life.
If your life were a book, what's the title of the chapter you're in right now?
Title of the chapter I'm in. We only got 4 chapters left, right?
Yeah. Well, you did mention them at the beginning. So if you want to repeat those, you can.
Eternal love, joy, happiness, and peace. I would say happy me.
Happy me.
Yeah.
I love it. If your podcast disappeared tomorrow, what impact do you hope it already made?
Wow. I've been thinking about that a lot. Say time equals value, right? Like you're sitting here with me and you're giving up your time, and time equals value. And for me, people remember the 1 hour and 20 minutes or hour that we spent together having a conversation with them, or they were having a conversation with me, that I was willing to listen to who they were, who they are, their purpose, mission, and passion, and how I wanted to speak that out. I wanted them to speak it out and make it a living thing and then part of their legacy. So I would think that I would want them to see me that way. Is that someone who has given me a living legacy to leave in this world.
Thank you for being a guest.
Your past is not a life sentence, and you don't have to earn healing by suffering more. If something Eric said lit a spark in you, follow it. That pull you feel, that's not weakness, that's wisdom. So do one thing after this episode. Put on that one song, move your body today, walk, stretch, dance in the kitchen. Let yourself feel something, and then reach out to that one safe person and say the truth. I'm ready to get better today. Send this episode to someone who needs hope. I'm Teresa Schindelbeck. Now go take your next step.